So I thought I'd make a video. As I hadn't made a video. I have a list of topics I try to make a video on, and I kind of gradually kind of work my way down whenever I get the chance. And I just kind of been lazy to make these videos. But this is a video about when I went to Poland, and I went to Poland, you know, 2 years ago to Auschwitz, and I went to this castle, and they had like these dungeons, and they still had some skeletons and stuff, and I remember going in there, and I remember it's weird because when I was a kid, I used to read this book called these series of books that were called Goosebumps by R.L. Stein. And my mother used to buy me like a book. I asked her if she could buy me like a book like once a month so I could finish one of these books once a month. And I kept up repetitively, and I was in 5th grade. And I remember just like I would totally get into the book like I was there. And I remember this particular type of book where it's a night. It's it's where it has a picture of a glow in the dark sort of aura, a night, like a ghost night. Now, I don't even remember what the book is called, but I saw the cover of it a while ago, and I remember reading in this book, and there is this scene. I mean, there's this part of the book where he talks about, and I think it's toward maybe 3/4 or toward the end of the book, and he's holding either a girl's hand or his friend, like his girlfriend or something, or whoever is this girl, and he's holding her hand, and they're going up in circles like this to the very top, and I'm going to say they're running away from this, I guess, ghost or spirit or whatever you want to call this night. I guess all night. I can't remember if the night was good or bad or it was guiding them. And I'm going to say they had like he was holding like back in the days, back in the days when they used to hold those torches and there's like a flame like in the Olympics, and you would hear these stories where people would go into like caves and like these castles, and he goes into he's crawling up and he's looking, he's creaking, and I remember just getting very thrilled about it, because obviously he's with this girl or whatever, and he has his flame and he's going in spirals, and this is what I remember of the book, and this is, I could have gotten some of this material wrong, but I'm talking about a book that I read, and I haven't opened and read it since I was 11 years old. That was about 20, almost, no, it was 12. Yeah, it was just about 20 years ago that I read that book. And I remember when I was in Auschwitz and I went to this castle, I sort of got that, I remember thinking of that feeling, sort of that scene. I don't know why that particular scene stood with me, but I remember it was very thrilling how the build up a little bit of how they were talking about the story. And but anyway, I don't remember how the book ends up. I don't remember the ending or anything like that, but I remember that, and it was sort of this whole like adventurous journey, and he's sort of guiding this path to this swirl of a castle that he's going up, and he's going toward the top, and I remember going up the stairs in the castle, and I remember thinking of that, and I saw these dungeons and all this other stuff, and it was sort of just a bitter experience for me. I felt really agitated, the fact that I didn't get to sort of feel like, I felt like I went there on a mission and I got that done, but I feel like I wasn't able to be like the full student that I was trying to be when I got there, so that I could really kind of have a good balance and soak in of that. And I really wanted to walk the distance, but unfortunately, I didn't do that. For those that don't know, I was going to try to walk. It's over 12 hours with my backpack in a single distance, and I was doing so much walking that I was able to calculate when my legs would get tired, when things would start breaking down, my clarity of mind. Because once you go into, it's kind of like when you're at work. You work like 12 hours and you work 13 hours and 14 hours for those that do. And you try to figure out what fuel works, if you drink coffee or if you drink soda to keep you up, or how your body starts. Some people break down a little bit more worse than others. Some people drain. Some people can push a little bit more. But anyway, I didn't go the distance. But it was a bit of a bittersweet, I wouldn't say bittersweet, because it was, it didn't go as well as I really would have liked to. But I got there and that was the mission. And I'd still like to go to these other Auschwitz camps, because being in the position that I'm in, and my father and everything that I'm going through, I thought that would definitely add a good contribution to people's minds, because to be more kind and related to the history and what human beings do, because it's been so documented so well. Anyway, I get to this castle and I go through it, and this is the prettiest girl that I had seen all of Poland. I mean, this girl, let me tell you, it was across the street, and I went to this bar, and it was like on the upper deck or something, and I was drinking a couple beers. I didn't even have a whole lot of beers. I think I had like 3 or 4 beers. That was it. And I think on the second beer or third beer, somewhere around there was a girl that just shows up at a table, like a long table, like a rectangle, long rectangle table, and she was sitting at the very end, and there was quite a bit of people there, but everyone was kind of sitting with their group, and there was about 3 or 4 people, because I was facing like this, and they were behind me, and there was a table there, and then behind him was where this girl was, and it was where this long table was. And it looked like it probably fit, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 people on each side, and then one on each end. And I remember looking over there, and I remember there was a group of just transgenders. They were all decked out, they looked like they were, all, fixed up. And I remember looking at the very end, I said, wait a minute. I mean, I looked and I was like, that's a female. I don't know. And let me tell you, there are times, and there are very few times in people where there's very lucky, we're going to talk about outie beauty, right? Where there are some girls that are built so pretty, and I mean like such a feminine and prettiness in their face. It's just like you're talking. Like, I don't know if you ever watched America's Top Model. Was it America's Top Model with Tyra Banks? I used to love watching that and have all the women runway, and I can kind of get an idea. And I mean, this was at a scale of like top 5 in the world. People that you come across with their faces, or the symmetry in their face, their nose proportion, the skin, not just the skin, but how well developed their skull, the bones, the nose, the lips proportionally. I mean, they were like, like Picasso, Da Vinci made that. It was very incredible. Genetics, a display of genetics. She wasn't a very big girl either. But she was pretty. I mean, like, just like it's kind of like, you don't just get, like, you look at a girl that she's just pretty, but you have to keep looking at them, because you're so amazed at how the prettiness of how they're built, in their face and their eyes, and because you at least I do, and I remember I was like, wow, that girl was beautiful, and she didn't look very happy. And I remember her just kind of doing this, and she was kind of leaning like this, and she was kind of looking at all these transgenders, and I thought, why is she? Because all these transgenders were like black hair, most of them, like kind of Latin transgenders, and they weren't particularly short, so I wouldn't say they were Latin. I mean, I don't know what other ethnicities carry black hair, but I don't think they were Middle Eastern. I don't think that, I don't think they were Iraq, Afghanistanian. I think they were Romanian, or some other ethnicity. But I remember her sitting at this table, and there wasn't a whole lot of talking among each other. They were just kind of all looking at each other like they had sort of done it. And I remember thinking to myself when I was looking over there, before I went over there and said something to her, I remember thinking to myself, that girl was in some sort of dungeon or trapped in a relationship or being sold for sex. And I wouldn't say just sold for sex, whatever relationship or whatever she was in the circle that she was in, she wanted out. And I believed at that rare moment in time, this is immediately what I just by taking a look, and I remember thinking, all those transgenders right there are the ones that have pulled her out of that situation, that saved her out of that, along with her probably with Jesus or God. But I really do believe that it was that group of people that pulled her out of that. And I remember just thinking of that, and I was like, wherever this girl came, I mean, because when girls are that pretty, there's people that just show up with, I mean, they scoop them up, put them in their place, the money, the tension, the control, I mean, a lot of them can't ever leave, and when you're that attractive, everything becomes so accessible to you that you're so usually very calm and easy to go about things, because this is just a quick reference, because it's like hot girls, they always get doors open for them. They get hit on so many times. You don't have to have a conversation to tell them how many guys tell them they're pretty, or whatever, or some cheesy line on Instagram or Facebook. They build such a tolerance to that they're so adapted to it that it really doesn't faze them. You're wasting your time when you play stupid shit like that. But when you're talking about just the physical anatomy, we're not talking about intelligence or character or personality or influential understanding of the environment that they're in, spirituality, none of those things. You're just talking about genetics, just the genetics, what you're born with. Very pretty. I was like, wow. And I sat down, and I remember right before I got over there, I was getting pissed. I mean, there was this guy right before I went over to her, like, I felt like kicking this guy's ass. I mean, I felt like I was really getting agitated, like fucking agitated, like angry fucking mad. And I don't like it. And I was getting mad at the fact that I felt somebody was maybe shooting me with an electronic device to get me mad, because I was trying to enjoy my day, and I was trying to enjoy my company. Even if I was by myself, just drinking and just, thinking about dumb shit and listening to music, like, But I remember I got up, and I wasn't at this bar more than maybe an hour. And I got up, and I went over to her, and I was like, I want to go see if she'll take a picture with me. Because I just wanted her to take a picture because she's so pretty. I was like, and I was kind of drunk. And it was kind of hot, smuggy, and I had my beard. So I knew that I didn't probably fit the criteria of maybe the guys that she would maybe around, particularly with black hair. Because this girl was a blonde girl with a light tan to fair tan to a mild tan skin, blonde hair, and piercing blue eyes, like piercing, like it just they're like a winter eyes, like winter, like Icelandic eyes. And I got up and I went over and said something to her. And I said, "Gosh, you're one of the most prettier girls that I think I've seen in the entire time that I've been here." And I was like, "Can I just take a picture with you?" And she kind of looks at me and she goes like I was ugly, nasty, and smuggy, like I was some homeless bum. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry to bother you." And I went back, sat down, finished my beer, and then left. But I didn't really think anything much of it anymore. But I remember when I was sitting there, I just took one look, and I remember just immediately thinking, whatever world that she was in, it was all those girls that helped her pull out or gave her a place to say, maybe all those transgenders were Christians or some sort of organization to pull people out of human trafficking. But I think they pulled her out of that. I really do. I think they pulled her, maybe some other, but they particularly maybe pulled her out of that because she didn't look happy at all. She looked like she had been in some sort of prison and like trapped in an environment where she wanted out. She had enough, and she didn't know how to do it and how it was going to happen. And they're the ones that did it for her. But I don't know what the story to that ever was. And it was very weird. It was the same thing, because I saw these transgenders, and there was no females I could even take a look at. And she was the only female that I think I could even recall seeing once at this entire place. But I got there and I went to these places, and it is what it is. And what I said on those videos, I was getting very agitated. You're going to spend... It's a different perspective of what so many people think of life and how I like to see things and like to experience them. But it was, it was to the least of education. It wasn't very educational to the least of an expression that I can kind of give, because it just felt like, this was about something else, and but I got there and I thought I'd make a video on that. I also wanted to talk about, Leanne, and when I went to London, this is back in 2019, that was about 7 years ago. Can you believe it? 7 years ago. It's just hard to believe it's all gone, it's all over now. And I went to the DMC to give support, and I talked about that. I talked to Avril Lavigne. I asked her if it was her, and she said she wasn't. And let me tell you something before I get into more of Leanne. But I went to, it was the Coral Bar. Got to this joint, and after being there, I didn't even drink very much. I had maybe 1 or 2 beers, like a bottle of beer, not like a 24 ounce, like just a Bud Light. And I was just chilling, enjoying the atmosphere. They had this little DJ playing, looked like Sasha Grey, the porn star kind of. Anyway, and I remember sitting down, and so at this point, my perspectives, how I see things is, there's all these people talking. I'm going to see if I can talk to some girls. And I talked to a few people, see how they're doing, yada, yada. And I think I go to the bathroom, come back, sit down. And I think when I sit down, it looks like Avril Lavigne, but she's sitting on the couch. So my opinion is, since somebody that famous and that well known, they first have to put a physical distribution of themselves, because they don't know how you're going to behave. You don't want to be putting somebody really fucking, notoriously famous, who has such a respect, who has such an impact to the United States, and fucking, you don't know if there's some crazy lunatic that's going to fucking hit them or fucking grope them or some sick shit. So you have to be very firm. So I knew that wasn't necessarily like they probably told her to do that, but I didn't think. I kind of got nervous when I saw her because I was like, damn, this, they have a lot of power and control, and whatever it is, the influences may not be entirely for the not good reasons when it ends up with me. But I try to keep it casual because I don't know. Keep the doors open to understand. Really don't know what this is. So she looks at me, gives this piercing look, and kind of looks away. And it just looks like she's talking. But I could tell she's interested. Not interested like sexual, but she's like whatever, who I am or whatever. And I don't say anything, so I just kind of talk as a friend. So I get up, use the restroom, come back, and she's sitting next to where I was sitting. She moved from across from me to the couch, just 5 feet away from me, to then sitting on this sort of chair, and she's sitting there by herself, and and I very gently, I'm like, okay, it's okay if I sit here, because I don't, I'm not trying to scare, like I'm some bearded black hair Mexican guy who hadn't had sex and can't talk to girls or something. Think I'm just gonna grow. There's a lot of sick shit people do out there. You don't want to get enrolled with the wrong people, right? So it's understood. So I kind of just sit me down, and I kind of look at her because she's kind of tiny, and I kind of look at her, slightly, because to let her know I'm not crazy or safe. I'm safe to talk for just a moment if you're willing to have a small discussion. And she's like very piercing, looking right at me. And so I'm talking to her. I started talking to her, and I gave my expressions of how I felt about the situation. And I told her, I was talking to her, and she told me, I said, one of the questions I asked her, I said, you look just like Avril Lavigne. Are you sure you're not Avril Lavigne? Are you sure? And she looks at me and she goes, and I don't know what the circumstances was, but when I was there talking to her, and I only talked to her for about like 15 minutes, and then I had to get up and take another piss, and when I came back she was gone. But when the 15 minutes that I was talking to her, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if it was an impression or like I just kind of put these puzzle together to what I think this interpreted for her as well. And I think that she was maybe confessing that someone had done something to her. Like at some point, someone had done something very bad. Like, maybe she was 16 or 17 and, some old guy screwed her or, grabbed her and like, oh, I own the music business, and fucked her, or some crazy shit like that, or someone really manipulated her behind closed doors or behind, backstage, where, she felt victimized and she felt like she confessed to something. And I didn't say, let me tell you, I didn't say anything to her, but I remember looking at her and I felt like somebody had victimized her. I felt like somebody had, like she probably knew that I got raped, and she wasn't going to, we're not having this conversation with a total stranger, especially with someone like that. But whoever else was watching was also kind of letting know, to kind of let the cat out of the bag. Maybe things that other people didn't talk about, what they said throughout their life, because, very pretty girl, extremely attractive, without a doubt. In the world in my youth, that's a guaranteed 10 babies, just baby after baby, creating family with for sure. But that I would. But anyway, I recall talking to her, and she relaxed for a moment, and I was thinking to myself, it was probably because I was really surprised that, I guess I did kind of believe her. Well, maybe it just isn't her. It just looks like someone just like her. But it was weird because I grew up with a bleach platinum hair girl that was Richard Murphy and John Murphy, their sister was out of the entire 600 students had bleach white blonde hair when she was a little girl, like 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 the angel white hair, like you see a little 7-year-old girl, and like full and shiny, not like frizzy. And she looked, and I remember being around people like that, and I always recognized that something that I always recognized when I was around Richard and around John. When I was around them, it was always like we were kids, and I spent the night at their house. In fact, I slept on Danielle's bed at least, dozens of times, because Jack would say, "Yeah, go sleep on my daughter's bed. She's not here, and you're fine. Just don't make a mess." Richard would say, "Go sleep on Danielle's bed. You can sleep on her bed if you want to, man." So I was so considered in the family, but I always knew that when I spoke to Danielle, because she was white and blonde hair, and that type of white, not like just a white girl, but I'm talking about like a platinum white hair girl, because my hair was black, and I was like this sort of Mexican mustache kid. Where did you get this kid out of the gutter? You always recognize the expressions of racism very fast, and how people react to you, like you're a plague disease, like you're a disease that you shouldn't be around those genetics, because that's too precious for you. You may tint that too much, and you'll ruin that. And it was very, like, I'd walk, we go bowling, and to Kathy it was normal, but like, there was nothing ever. Let me tell you, I was like just one of the brothers. I was just like one of just the regular kids. I promise to God, and there was nothing sexual that I ever, and she was around all the time, and and when I say this because, when we would go places, I would always understand the reaction of a guy that I was around whenever they would look, because it didn't have to do that she was a girl and just white. It had to do also because the level of whiteness that it was like that she was. And I was just this black-haired kid that could, like, tint that potentially, breeding and mating, because even when if they know that you're not going to do anything, a lot of adults don't like that, because they'll know that kid will build a comfortable boundary with that type of color and intensity of color, and you will feel comfortable with that to more than likely breed. And so then that's like crossbreeding ethnicities, and they don't like that. So there was always something that I understood about that, and it was just kind of a regular, like I'd go put on my bowling shoes or whatever it may be, and I'd immediately notice how the people would treat me. I'd talk to Danielle, and I'd look at them, and they never liked it. And it was sort of a common thing that I kind of understood. In fact, Richard used to feel so comfortable around me. It wasn't until I started telling him, I was like, man, he goes, you should be careful, watch for your sister, man. I was like, because he was telling me, yeah, go sleep on her bed. I was like, no, dude, that's your sister, dude. Girls are girls, and they keep the girly stuff and whatever in their rooms, and that's they're always in their own girl place. The boys always stay, and that's how it usually was. And I think that came also with maturity. That came a huge level of maturity of understanding how life functioned, just because I was going to a nursing home all the time, and and that's kind of what was going on. But I thought I'd make a video on that. But yeah, I talked to her for about 15 minutes, and but anyway, she leaves. I wait another 15 minutes, and Leanne shows up, Cloudsdale, and she's real petite, real pretty as well, real pretty. The symmetry in her face, very thin, and for some reason, it does not click in my head. She looks familiar, but I can't relate the name, an exact person that I actually met in Alaska. And I talked to her. We had a drink. I was joking around with her a little bit and kind of pushing her buttons a little bit. And I mean, I was hoping I was going to get laid that night. Every guy thinks of that. I was like, man, maybe I can get laid. Maybe all this other shit is just all in my head, this AIDS shit. And I talked to her, and it took her for a little while before she decided, hey, let's go to the club. And we went to the club, and I mean, I could have been because of the Red Bulls I was drinking, but went clubbing all night. There was a couple pretty girls. One of the worst bathroom experiences I think I'd ever experienced. I mean, they literally have everyone like, I'm not even kidding. There's like, when you talk about no privacy, it's like it was almost kind of like a table, water fountain kind of looking deal, like, and you just pull your junk out and you just piss along with everyone else. Just like there was just a piss bin. Like, it was one of the craziest things. And it was supposed to be at a fancy club too. I think it was at Club Ministry or Fuse. I can't remember. It was a legendary club. Very legendary club. It's been there forever. All the great DJs have played there, and I think Doc Martin could have been playing that night. I don't know if he was. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't him. I can't remember who was playing that night, but somebody was. And it wasn't some of the best experiences. Caught her sort of dancing with some Arabian guy, and I kind of thought, and I froze, and I'm like, well, geez, I guess I'm not really that fucking important, and I kind of got mad at the individual, but I thought, you could see that she was kind of making that decision, and when so I was working my game plan as well. When you're trying to build attractions and stand your ground, the attraction tends to build greater than as if you're sort of this puppy building up, because that's not what women are attracted to. But anyway, and talked to her. I already talked about this videos long ago. Got in a scuffle, and I thought they were planning. You know what I thought also afterwards? Right afterwards, I thought that they were potentially telling me, or not telling me, potentially building up for me to get into a fist fight, like a real physical fist fight. Because when we were walking, waiting in line, they check us, and it was this white guy, sort of military looking, sharp looking, like a UFC fighter, like real built, like this guy looked like a fight. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, like, I'm pretty sure this guy was straight. This guy, he likes women. This guy, you can tell, this was a straight guy. I mean, there was no doubt. This guy's attracted to women. And anyway, we walk in, and so when the whole situation, I talk about turning around the corner, and I just enough where I caught in my eyes, some guy was grabbing her. It was some Asian long-haired guy. And I don't know what the fuck, but it looked like she was faking it. Right when I could see it right enough where she was faking it, and even though I was sort of disoriented because I had been up for over 24 hours, and I had beers, and I had been sort of moving my body for so much, and I call and I kind of walk over and say, hey, what the hell are you doing? Like, oh, you touched my girl, kind of do that. And so he walks by me and goes, yeah, why don't you come here? I'll fuck you in the bathroom. Or he says some shit like that. He grabs my hand and starts pulling me. Like, I'm outside on, like, the curb. It's sort of out in public and other people. And it's like, the sun is coming up. It's like 7 o'clock in the fucking morning. And I go, and I look and I pull back. And I was like, what the fuck's wrong with you, man? What the fuck? And I don't know this guy. I was thinking this guy was on crack, like on a hard drug. I thought he was like a fucking, and maybe possibly homeless. He was really strung out, fucked up for a moment. I thought this guy was all fucked up on drugs. And so I kind of just barricaded myself in front of her, so that whatever he was going to do, he was going to have to do it to me so he didn't touch her, right? walks away. I'm staying underneath her umbrella. And she kisses me. And we get in the car and leave. And then I ask her, I feel so dehydrated. I mean, very dehydrated. This guy over here. And she's talking to me, and she's kind of looking at me, kind of like, I know there wasn't anything gonna good happen. Like, there was no chance of me getting late, right? And so I, start talking, and I thought, well, maybe if I just make this sort of sleazy, maybe it'll kind of change the settings, because, whatever. Maybe she's looking for a one-night stand as well, or to be an adult, and and she was like, no, I don't want it. I was like, you want to, grab a hotel and go watch a movie or something, grab a couple drinks and just relax, and this is like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm strung out, like tired from the drinking, been up all night moving, dancing, still feel disoriented from the loud music, like when you're in the club all night, you come outside and it was kind of weird, that weird feeling. It's just she don't want to. I say, okay, well, we get to a destination, and I said, so where do you live? I said, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but, I don't want to interfere with, where her lives, thinks I'm a stalker or anything. And I said, it's okay, look, just drive me. I think I remember telling the taxi driver, drive me or stop here at the corner or something. I said, look, don't worry. This guy will get you home safe. I'll pay for the ride. Just call me whenever you get home safe, okay? I was like, I gotta go. All right, bye. And I left just like that. She called me, I think later that day or night. Said she made it home and safe. And I think she said she lives south. I think she lives south. Was it south? I can't remember what it was, what part, but she said she lived in. And that was it. But man, I was thinking of her, and I felt pretty bummed out. And thank God this guy offered me a water, and I was thinking, because I was thirsty as fuck, and it was so fucked up because this guy who was driving the taxi driver, he looked like a lot of the guy that was dancing with her. He kind of did. I was like, is this the same motherfucker who's playing these fucking games? And I definitely don't want to get thrown in jail into a foreign country, because I get into these foreign countries. I'm not looking to start trouble. I'm not looking to have myself thrown in jail for criminal crimes at all, unless I have to. I mean, that's like a total desperation unless I have to. But it's always 10 times more nerve-wracking than, because you don't know what system they got. And I'm not trying to spill shit, like that in a different place. Yeah, and that was it. I didn't talk to her. Never heard from her again. Leanne Cloudsdale, and so yeah, that was 7 years ago. So I thought I'd make a video on that, and I tried contacting her on Facebook. Never heard from her. Never saw. So you got to respect that, right? You got to just leave it alone, and it is what it is. Sometimes when I make videos and I post them on there, they necessarily don't interpret to what people think. They think they interpret. They mean a much more broader situation that people really don't know. So that's always a good thing. It's like musicians, for those that sort of like to keep a very deep part of that just to the unknown, that nobody really understood what that really meant. And just let everybody make up to whatever they want and makes them happy, and that's fine, but that's not what it meant for me. And that's okay. And so when I make these videos or whatever, but yeah, I thought I'd make a video on that. I thought about going back to London and just walking around trying to look to see if I can find her again. And I did come across another pretty girl. I came across another blonde girl when I was over at, I remember having this apricot. I had this apricot beer. It was probably one of the best beers I have ever drank. I mean, they had like a selection of beers, and I remember drinking this apricot beer, and it was probably one of the best flavored beers I had ever drank. I mean, I only had like two beers, no more than three. They were glass bottle, and I remember it was a really great beer. Whoever made that beer, and I had sobered up. It was like the day before I leave, and it was the day before I leave, and to the flight back out of London after the whole 3 weeks that I was there, or 2 weeks that I was there for 3 weeks. Yeah, I think I was there about 3 weeks. And you know, after the 3 weeks were up, um, yeah, it was the day before, and I remember saw a couple blonde girls, and I saw them show up. And one of the sad and tragic things that I remember seeing when I was in London, and this still bothered me to this day, and it bothered me. It bothered me when I walked by, but I didn't do anything, and that's the bottom line. I didn't. So I was walking. It was like one of the last days or last few days. It was after Leanne. It's like the last few days that I was there, and I'm walking through these sort of tunnels and like to get to these bus stops, and I come across this homeless guy, and I mean, this guy looked really homeless, like really, really in bad shape. And he was a white guy, looked kind of tall, sort of tallish, particularly kind of tallish. And what he kind of reminded me of is I remember many years ago, this guy was in like some super, super raggedy clothes. I remember seeing all these other people around him walking, and just like when they were walking in a way that he didn't even exist. And I was bothered by that. Like I saw these other blonde girls, all these other pretty girls, and as all these people were walking, none of these people to even, like if you thought people felt sympathy for people that were homeless out here in the U.S., no, when I got there, they didn't look like they even flinched a hair to even consider this guy was a person. Like their body language really distributed that this guy didn't exist. That bothered me, and I remember looking. I was gonna I wanted to ask this guy, hey, you want to get something to eat? Hey, can I give you some money? And this guy was like in really bad shape, and I thought, there's no way this guy can look that bad and genuinely be homeless. And I remember all these guys are just walking by, and I felt bad after walking past this guy, wanting to should have said something. The reason I say is because he reminded me very much of many years ago when I was with Anthony Basili, Nick Carrera, John Basili, and me. It was four of us, and we went in John's car. We went to Wet and Wild. We went to go swimming. It was Hurricane Harbor. I don't know what they call it now. And we were on Harry Hines. Was it Harry Hines? Yeah, it was like right near Harry Hines, or on Harry Hines. And no, it wasn't Harry. It was near Core Records. And we used to go to this place because he used to go to this place to pick up beer, particularly when I was like 17, 18. And I recall being 16 years old, and we stopped by McDonald's, and it was the morning, and I saw this homeless guy, and he looked like a picture out of a Bible. To me, he looked like a picture out of a Bible when you hear about like the blind beggars, the people that are blind that are begging for food and waiting for somebody to help them. And I remember we drove by, and he stopped for a second, and I looked, and I turned like that, and I was the only one that turned and looked, because they were all kind of scared and nervous. I said, why is that guy laughing? And I kind of looked like he was laughing just a moment, because you kind of don't know if people are kind of crazy or laughing. But I thought maybe was that guy laughing or what? And we were like really quiet in the car. was like, Nick behind me, he goes, he's not crying, he's not laughing, he's crying. And I remember this guy was crying. He looked like he was in a potato sack bag. This is what like that kind of poor. And it was 105 degrees. I mean, it was like 100 degrees. It was at least 100 degrees at like 7 in the morning when we stopped by there. And the sun was already full out. It was burning hot. I don't even know how this guy's legs were even on the concrete and him not getting up from the burn. And I remember feeling like we're going to hell. We're going for not helping this guy. And I didn't say anything. I was like, and we all got kind of quiet, and you could tell everybody in the car was just like feeling like shit. Like and we wait until we get to the Hurricane Harbor, and I said, you see, now we're going to a place that's full of water, and this guy was just asking for something to eat, and we didn't do anything. And here we are, and we could. They were all in the car like, yeah, great, Hector. Thanks for making it feel like shit. And so, but he reminded me, that guy, remember, he reminded me so much of that guy that I saw in London when I saw this guy. And I mean, this guy looked, he was in pretty bad shape. I mean, when I talk about, I've been homeless, it just in every single environment you can imagine. And when I say that somebody's in bad shape in a type of homeless situation, this individual was in like really bad shape, so thought I'd share that, and that's the way it kind of goes. So never heard from Leanne again. I thought about going there. I don't want to go on a wild goose chase, and that was 7 years ago, but that was kind of the end of that. I don't know what the conclusion was to that Avril Lavigne, or if it was her, which I believed it was, but I was like, well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe just someone that looks just like her would lie and say that it wasn't her when it is. And there was also another interesting guy that I saw. You ever seen Body Worlds? The guy that does the autopsies on human bodies? I think that guy had a son, or he had a relative relative, because I remember eating at this restaurant, and this is one of the craziest things. I went to this restaurant, I think it was like the day before the DMC, or it was like the day or two before DMC, or it could have been after, but I'm going to say it was, and it was around 1 or 2 o'clock, and I went to this nice restaurant and had this lentil soup. It was like a yellow lentil soup. It was really good. And it was a nice sort of setting. It kind of looked like the Titanic kind of settings, furniture and tables. And I was really glad to be there. And all of a sudden there's this guy that sits down, and he looks just like my Uncle Richard Palomo. He looks just like him. I say, you look just like my Uncle Richard Palomo. You look just like him. Which I think he's an identical twin. I really do think he's an identical twin. I actually met him. I think I met him before, but yeah, I was there, and the waiter who came over to me, I don't know if y'all ever seen this guy, but I don't remember, the guy who invented Body Worlds. It's like a blonde hair Polish. I don't know if he's Polish. He looks very German. But he made Body Worlds, and he's like a pathologist, or I don't know exactly what the terminology is, but he was serving the food, and he didn't look like he necessarily worked. And he came over, and I thought it wasn't him, but he looked exactly like this guy. Like this guy is related to him. And I remember thinking, I was like, I think this guy is the one that deals with a lot of dead bodies. He's the one that he's related to that. He's a guy that does something like that for a living. Does all the autopsies and puts people in bags and does all the paperwork, and he does that for a living. But I don't think it was him. I believe it was like it was either his son or his cousin or someone. And I didn't say anything. It was very nice though. I did speak to him for just a moment. Very nice, polite, and I left. And but yeah, I went to these destinations. I got to these locations, and um, unfortunately, I didn't get to do uh, some of the things I would have liked, and I thought it would have been really great for me to, because you think you're going to remember these things and you end up forgetting them. So they're usually very short term unless you keep the photos. And, you always want to take something positive, or at least I try to, and retain that for more influential, sort of a helping drive mechanism. Like, give the moment a purpose, because you won't remember much of it. So I sort of try to make that a positive. I understand, we go through life with Jesus and God in our minds, and hoping that, we're the lucky ones and not the unlucky ones end up dying sooner than we would like. But yeah. So I forgot what I was thinking. What was I talking about? Yeah, it was the autopsy guy, and then and so I remember taking a couple of these taxi drives, and ended up leaving, and I thought I saw one of the UFC Ali Star. It looked just like him. It looked just like him when I saw him out there one day when I was staying at a hostel. Um, but yeah, as far as Leanne, she gave me her email. I don't remember what it was. A lot, for some reason, I don't even know why. I threw the phone number away, and I deleted it, and I was like, well, I'll just leave her alone, maybe I'll find someone else or something. And it didn't happen that way. But anyway, I thought I'd make a video. Very petite, very petite. It's always a frustrating thing like that, because you always want to stay respective and make it as fun as you can, but I don't want, you never want to be looked at as like sort of the perpetrator of the guy that didn't get laid, so he does something fucking sick, right? Because there's so many sick people out there, a lot of stupid, crazy ass shit. And but I thought for a moment that when I talked to her, I thought that she was related to the Queen, or she was somewhere related to the palace, the Buckingham Palace. I thought she was somewhere like associated with, like she lives there. Like that's her house, right? She's in Buckingham Palace, for those that don't know, in the UK, in London. And because one of the things is, when I visited Buckingham Palace, like the few days before I left, I recall seeing this pretty girl walking with some papers in her hand, and she was walking on the other side of the fence. And let me tell you, out of any place I've ever been to in my life, I've never seen more prettier girls in my life. And when I was in London, when I came across females, when they were passing by me, whatever, they're by far way more attractive, physically, very attractive, very pretty, very, very, very pretty. And but yeah, I thought, well, maybe after my CNA, maybe take some, some assignments, and then maybe go on a voyage. I never know what's going to happen from here on out, but we'll see what happens. It's very, very difficult to be traveling, but I'm going to be focusing on school, that's for sure, to get that done, get that CNA, to do some assignments, and see where my next stop will be. Maybe I'll have a car and I'll just stay, save as much money as I possibly can. But I'm definitely probably going to do some assignments. I definitely want to do Like, I want to do some searching and find like a place or a church that does some charity work to go to like Africa and deal with HIV patients. And I know because Africa's so populated with it, and maybe goes to some poor villages in like India, like a church group, or a couple of people, or find somebody that maybe has 3 or 4 people, and do some work there. Whether it's just whether it's just unloading some of the day, and then maybe feeding some people that are sick and dying, that absolutely have no hope whatsoever in existence. But I think that'd be great, healthy, do some church work. It's one of the reasons why I want to get this CNA license, because it'll give me an opportunity to be licensed to do that, to do a little bit of work like that. I think it'll be good for me. I think it'll help living and help my spirit, for sure. I think it'll be very good for people as well to look at someone as myself who is a cancer patient, and obviously, probably HIV positive, and the only person left in the whole world with this shit. And I think it'd be very good for people, see a guy in his 40s, and it'd be a good thing, and not just what people see. But I think it'll be very good for what Jesus and the Lord wants. You can do all this talking, you can do all this lecturing, you can do this and this and study the Bible and all this, and it's wonderful. But how are you really being effective toward people? How are you the person that's actually feeding the people that can't feed themselves anymore? Or do you just influence people to tell you, look how bad that looks, and let me see what I tell you I see? But are you the actual one making that happen? It's a different story. And I think that's more of a personal relationship with God and humanity. And I think that'd be good. And I couldn't do that nonstop. Other people could. But I think it'd be good for me to do that. There's some other countries do it like a 3-week assignment, find like a church here in the U.S. I know there was one in Lawrence, Kansas that I remember seeing a brochure, and I picked it up, and it said like they did nights, or they're called nights or something, night ministries or something like that, and I think they did traveling and to help really poor places or something. I thought, well, maybe I could do something like that, find a place like that, So, but you have to be, I don't know what the structures of that would be. You have to be heavily influenced with the Bible and understand it before you can go, because there's going to be preaching the Word. I understand preaching the Word, but to really primarily be there for the work as well, like that's going to be the huge portion of this, of that. So we'll see how that goes. Keep you updated.